All right, got it.
All right. Okay, looks like we're good.
All right, awesome.
So hello to everybody who is joining us for our Michael Watkins panel. We have him right here of Highburn Studios. And you can say hi to everybody if you want.
Hi.
So today I think we're going to be sketching some for us and talking to us about storytelling.
Correct. So I'm trying to figure out, since I'm kind of doing this Han Solo, I'm sure you can see if people have questions.
Yes,
okay.
And I will absolutely read those out to you.
Sweet. All right. So as she was saying, yes, I am Michael Watkins, according to the name tag or the banner. I own Highburn Studios. It's a comic imprint that I created when I was in high school. Yeah, I was a really nerdy kid. Outside of that, I've also worked for Marvel and DC. I've worked for Image, IDW. So name a major publisher, and I've probably done something for them. I've also done some voice acting. I voiced Venom for Renew Your Vows, Magneto, and Mole Man. And I was in a really small film called The Dark Knight Rises. It's like a little cult film. No one ever really saw that. But yeah, so that's a little bit of my pedigree. So storytelling. If you want to get into comics, and I see this at shows a lot, so I'll preface all of that here. I see people come up and they go, "Hey man, I want to draw comics." And they'll show me this really amazing, gorgeous drawing of a character. And that's awesome. You drew a thing. But to work in comics, you're called a sequential artist, which means you're going to do art and a story. So you're trying to get the reader to kind of follow along with what you're showing them, and then their mind fills in a little bit of the rest. So you can't be super lazy, honestly, to read comics because you want your mind to work. You'll hear a lot of things about using like this Z format to tell a story. Yes and no. But today we'll go over some basics. I'll talk about different types of shots. I'll talk about some different types of camera angles, different ways to position characters. We'll talk about a little bit about lighting and how to really direct your reader. And if you have questions, ask. If I talk too much, tell me to shut up. That's what my wife does. And we'll just go from there. So I'm gonna flip this around, and I'm sorry I'm at a show. I'm doing a convention, so there's a little bit of background noise, and I'm trying to stay in the corner so we can do this. All right, so first things first, everything that we're gonna go over today. Now this is my copy of this book. I have had this book since 1984. Yes, I am old. That's back when dinosaurs walked. So this is How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. This is a great book to pick up for learning things. And like I said, I mean, don't return your library books like this. So yeah, so just, it's done by a guy named Stan Lee. I don't think anyone who's read comics or seen Marvel movies is familiar with who Stan Lee is. But anyway, it's him and John Buscema, and it's a great reference point. So first thing first, you're gonna have a page. This is the most daunting thing you will ever see in the history of being an artist. Sorry, there's something on my camera. Is a blank page. So if you're going to start out with a story, you'll get a script. Now the script could be from the type of writer who writes literally just like a movie script. So it'll be page 1, panel 1, New York City. From a distance, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. So you know, I need to draw New York City from a distance at 9 o'clock in the morning. So I'll probably make this a little dark in places to show some sunlight. And then I would do some highlights on one of the sides of the buildings to show where the sun is moving throughout the day. You might get a writer who tells you page 1 through page 6. New York City, you're going into Starbucks, a girl bumps into you, you spill your coffee, you're really mad, you throw it down, you curse the barista, and you walk away. And then you have to interpret all of that into storytelling. So there's a lot more room for you as an artist there. I work with either one. So, yeah. So let's look at just kind of what we started with here and a blank page. So the first thing you're always going to want to do is literally establish, and I'm going to make a small page and a page just so you guys can see what I'm doing. So you're always going to want to do an establishing shot. And for this, I'm going to do what's called a long shot. And so we're going to pick a city. So go to Google. Look up shots of the city that you want to draw, because if you're going to draw a reference point that's realistic, people are going to look and say, hey, that doesn't look like New York. That doesn't look like Chicago. So pay attention to that, because there's always that eagle-eyed reader who will call you out. So get your reference. Here we sketched out a little city. Determine if you want day or night or midday. And honestly, look up, if you can, that city. Find a photographer link or something. See if you can find shots of that city through different times of the day. So you're paying attention to literally how the sun moves. So you can start out with your story in the morning. And if you're really paying attention, you can start out early in the morning with, here's your city. Here's, we'll do a close up here of maybe a city street. Throw your car in. And I'm not going through detailed stuff right now. I'm just trying to make this short, sweet, and cute. So you throw in your car. Here's a street light. A couple of things here. Basically you're trying to make somebody feel like they're walking down a city street. Remember, cities are dirty. So those are things that you're going to want to pay attention to. You're not going to just have like, here's a very clean area. You might have a little grate out here. You can have a little bit of puddle of water. If it's nighttime, you can have the light source. Throw a sheet of paper floating in the wind. Big cities, again, they're mostly dirty. So those are little things that editorial departments will look for. One of my editors at DC Comics, when I first started showing work, told me that my buildings were too clean. So if you're going to do a building, you might start out with your building like this, but say it's an older building and it might have some wonky little architecture. We'll do some Greco-Roman stuff here. You've got your columns. And you can lay all of this out with a ruler. Like, that's a really good thing to do to learn your perspectives. But one of the things that people don't realize is when you go back to ink your own work or you find an inker, try to ink some of this straight hand as possible, because you'll get a more organic line. I do that with Transformers. And people think, man, Transformers, that's a lot of ruler work. It is. But I try to draw and ink them with my bare hand and with as little of ruler work as possible, so it feels more real. It feels more organic. So, if I'm doing something like this, I don't have to make it perfect, because the real building's not going to be perfect. But say I want to do a little crack in the steps here. Maybe if we're looking at the top of this building here, you can do a little thing right here, like there's a little bit of the concrete started to rub down. Look at old houses. Key thing is to pay attention to everything around you, because drawing comics, everybody can learn how to draw Superman, but if you can draw a guy drinking a cup of coffee in the morning and make it compelling, that's the key to this. So we have our street here, and sorry, I jump around a lot. I'm a little ADD at times. So we'll have our street here, and the city's a little dirty. So we've established the city. We've zoomed in on the street. Let's go to, here's a bedroom window. You know what? We're just going to peek through the window here. Just do some blinds. The blinds are out of whack. So that can tell you that, hey, maybe this guy lives in an apartment that's not too taken care of. Now, here's your fire escape. We can even put a dead plant in the window. He's got his window open. Maybe it's a hot summer night, the plant's dead. Here's some brickwork. Again, add a little defect to it. You can literally make the side of your building a little crinkly. Because if you look at stone and rock, you'll see it's not perfectly straight. It just appears that way. So, maybe we'll have like the corner of a bed or something right here. Throw a pair of pants in the floor and a cup. So, we're establishing that we've made it to a city. We're at a street. It's some point maybe in the morning. And we're looking through a dilapidated window of a guy who's got a rundown apartment. So if I told you this guy showed this person had a horrible night's sleep, and I'm going to ask you guys this now, so you tell me their answers. If I said, draw me a person asleep in the bed who had a horrible night's sleep or is trying to go back to sleep, that 7 o'clock in the morning, I don't want to get up moment. And yeah, how many panels do you think it would take to do that?
I'd imagine you could do it in one, but maybe 2 or 3 would be easier.
Right. So 1 would be the answer for me. I've actually seen this done in a comic. The guy did it in 16 panels over 2 pages. He showed the guy tossing and turning. And that's just boring to the reader.
Yeah, that seems like a lot.
Yeah. So, we have a grid here. So we're going here, and people read left to right anyway. So you'll hear people say you want to do this Z to lead the reader's eye. You're going to read left to right anyway. Because, English comics are read left to right because you read left to right. If you're Japanese, of course, you read from the back of the book and from right to left because, reasons. Cultural differences. So that's why if you read a good manga, you're going to read it backwards for us. But so I would go approach this panel. Here's the guy who slept, who didn't sleep well. I'm going to leave part of this up here. So I've decided I want to stylize my page a little bit. Now, you want to stay within your grid, which is what these panels are. You don't need to break it necessarily. And we'll talk about why you do and where to here in a few minutes. But I would do something like, all right, here's the bed. Here's the guy laying in bed. Put one leg out here. You know what? He sleeps with a foot out of the cover. I do that. Got his arms up here. Here's his head. You know what I would do? Put the pillow over his head. Have him holding the pillow down. If you think about it, he is just really wanting to go back to sleep. So the pillow would have a little hump in it. Throw the sheet over him here, so that way, you know, you don't have to have any nudity or underwear or anything. Leave this leg out. Let's put his sock still hanging off his foot. All right. You can have his pants folding off. Remember I said we had them like right here? So we'll fix this. Have his pants hanging off the bed. There's a nightstand right here. This drawer is out. Let's knock the lamp over, because somewhere through his tossing and turning, the lamp fell over. We'll blame the cat later. Let's have the alarm clock down here in the drawer. He's literally just thrown the alarm clock in the floor. There's his headboard. You can have a sock hanging out here. Here's his shirt. Here's a McDonald's cup. By the way, charge them $50 now. You just gave them a sponsorship. We love it. There you go. It's a McDonald's cup. It's leaking. Here's a throw rug because reasons. We'll have the other pillow here. Sorry, excited con people. Now, these are all things saying like this guy just had a rough kind of night. But notice here how I have the blinds that are a little broken up. Take your
camera just seemed to have gotten a little off center there. Yeah, there we go.
Sorry. All right, there we go. Thank you. So take your, guy sleeping in a bed horribly and look up here where we did the blinds and try to retrace the light of the blinds, a couple of them bent down, across this. And now go in and put shading here, lightly across. And what you've done is shown the light coming through. It's early in the morning. He's knocked his lamp over. His alarm clock is here. You know what? It might be his cell phone, because people don't really use alarm clocks that much anymore. Put his cell phone over here out of the way. But you can show that he's covered his head up. He's like, man, I just want to go back to sleep. His clock's going, drawers hanging out because he just left things laying everywhere, and he just crashed hard. Maybe he pulled a bender all night because that's why his sock's on his foot. But I mean, it gives you reasons. But we've shown the city. We've picked, a light source. So a time of day. We decided early morning. Like, let's do real early. Not enough that the street light is still on. We've shown some debris. We've zoomed in on his window. We see that he doesn't take care of his plants. He's kind of a slob. So he's probably single, because no married man's going to get away with living like this. He's slept really poorly, but we've got enough light creeping in, so it's time for him to get up. And if you really wanted to push it, because you wanted to hone in on a time, you could always do another little panel right here. and just do the face of the alarm clock, and to say it says 5 a.m. You know, so this is telling you now that this light is that street light. And that's what's keeping him awake. And he's just, for him, life sucks.
Yeah, he needs better blinds.
You know, given the way his house looks, he probably needs a couple of things. But that is an example of storytelling done in a way that leads the reader. And I've kind of told you a little bit of a story. Without me giving you any actual dialogue, we've established a lot about this guy. I mean, we've established that he probably doesn't live in a nice neighborhood. Because, you know, things are run down. We've established, again, he's probably single. He's slovenly. He's got to be up early in the morning for something. So, you know, we learned some things. And this is how you build a story base. Let's talk about another thing that I like. Focusing a reader's eye. So let's do an airplane. Suppose, you know, we want somebody to see this airplane and it's flying over a city. So we do some buildings. Here's your panel. Now, all we really want people to do is see that airplane. Now, this tells you, hey, there's an airplane in the sky. How could we do this better? So we're going to leave our airplane. And what we're going to do now is we're going to redirect our city. We're going to go from large to small with our buildings. So this gives these buildings a sense of scale. Like that plane is going to be smaller. And we've got these massive buildings here. But if you've noticed what I'm doing with the buildings, is I am making them point to the airplane. So I'm making you look. Now let's take this a step further. Everyone here's been a little kid. Any kid at some point in their life has seen an airplane and went, look, airplane. So let's do a little pointy finger. Small hand. Big head, because it's a little kid and their bodies are wonky shaped. Seriously, if you're ever drawing a kid, remember, make their heads, hands, and feet big and the rest of them small and lanky. And you'll usually get the proportion of a kid because you're growing. Let's have him over here doing this. And he's holding his mom's hand. So you'll make this arm bigger. So now what you've effectively done is you've shown this little kid, that hand is way too big. Shown this little kid pointing at an airplane, holding hands. Now you're looking up at the buildings, looking at the kid pointing. You see the plane, but you've guided the reader, and the reader didn't even realize it. You just went, huh, I'm looking at the thing. Now, these characters may not mean crap to the story, but you've pulled everyone back to being a kid for a minute, being a kid looking at a plane. So, you know, maybe this plane is carrying G.I. Joe to its next mission. You know, it could be anything, but you're establishing a little bit of realism. All right, so I'm gonna break for a second and ask you guys, do you have any questions on any of this so far?
While we let our readers kind of engage if they're feeling chatty today, they've been kind of shy so far today, but I love how you're talking specifically about telling the story with no dialogue, because I know a lot of comics, especially web comics, I've noticed, like ones that are online, they make a lot of very heavy use of dialogue.
Right. So a lot of that is either due to a writer who just has a lot to say, and usually there's an artist. A lot of storytelling in comics has disappeared in the last 10 to 15 years because they've tried to, things have just changed. So storytelling has kind of went out the window, which is why I talked about like this panel. I've literally seen this done in 2 pages over 16 panels when I can do this in 1. And I can bring in 3 other panels and tell you about a guy. So you think of this. You are the director of your movie as a storyteller and as an artist. Your budget is as much of your mind as you can use. So if you want to blow up the entire city, it just goes to how well can you blow up a city? You know, if you want to, your budget is your mind. Just think about that. Your weakest link in your arsenal of art is the weakest part of your movie. So if you have trouble drawing people, casual people, then you work on it. Go sit down in a mall or, you know, outside in a park or something, and just take 5 seconds and literally sketch the people that are around you. Like I just saw this motion. So the guy's got a little bit of a hunch in his back. He's wearing a beanie. He's wearing glasses. Like I said, he's got a little hunch here. His arm is here. And he's grabbing this little portfolio bag to stand up. And there was a table right here. So he's starting to stand. And he's gone now, but yeah. And I saw that he had a little red satchel bag here. But I mean, like this guy's literally just sat across from me, but he was going to pick this up and he's arching his back because he's literally picking up a thing here. So that's why you see that. So let's grab another page and we'll talk about that for a minute. Flip this so you can kind of see my face while I switch things over. So we talked about environment. Let's do that. Let's talk about people. So, you know, anybody can draw your standard guy. Superhero, big broad shoulders. Big old quads. This guy's definitely hit the gym once or twice. So you know you can do this. This part's easy. Anybody can draw him. But if you look around, and there's this really good book on facial expressions for the artist. I highly recommend finding that. Or if you have a very animated friend, and I mean a very animated friend, don't tell them you're doing this. But you know, if you're talking to them and you know like they're the person who talks with their hands while they're doing a thing, grab your phone and film them. So, you know, just be like, hey man, yeah, look, I'm just like doing some references. And they're like, what? You know, catch them in the middle of telling a story that they're excited about. Get them in a moment where they're just like bored out of their mind, and watch, you know, that animated face that'll go from like, yay to like, or the person who just talks so long, or your teacher in math class and you just had lunch and you're like, man, I just want to go to sleep. Those are all very expressive things that you can use to tell your story. So you can have your face here. And by the way, almost everyone starts their faces with this center of the face, eye line. And this tells me this person's looking straight at me. But what if we decide to do we could do a little bit of a side of the face and add in a little bit here. And you can just put the hand right here and the arm up. And then just kind of mash the mouth up into it. Like, there's your cheek. And there's your nose. And, you know, this eye is tired and droopy. This guy looks a little angry, but, you know, the point is you can work on drawing a blah face. Yeah, there we go. A little more blah. Nose is a little scrunched from his hand. Now the eyes are looking down a little bit more. Draw the brow. Guy's just having a day. Trump. Yeah, there's your ear. You know what? He's got a faux hawk. He's spent 5 minutes with Michael too long.
It's probably the guy who had to wake up at 5 a.m. earlier.
Yeah, there you go. And then you know, here you would do this. Yeah, this little. There's, you know, he's got a little chin teeth because reasons. He's trying to bring it back in style. And then, you know what? Let's change his eye focus a little bit. But when I hear, he's got his phone in his hand. There's his thumb getting ready to click a thing. Now, what you have is literally come back here. Come here, flip around. This guy. And he's holding his phone like I am right now on a Zoom call. And maybe he really wishes he had Starbucks right here, because there's a Starbucks right below me. So it's on my mind. But I mean, you know, see, this is a realistic person. Like, this is something you're going to see. And no, I'm not worried about like the angles and the anatomy right now. I'm just trying to help you get to the point of, you know, here's your guy. And honestly, when you're sketching out storyboards, the page I have in front of me is 11 by 17. I sketch in a notebook that is 3 inches by 5 inches. And I draw everything I want to do on a page small, because it's easier for your eye to fill in gaps. And then what I do is I scan this in and I take a light box and then I draw to scale realistically what I want. But by doing this, I'm not forcing myself to focus so much on drawing it correctly. I'm focusing myself to draw on the action. And that's what we'll talk about now. So outside of comics, I have been a martial artist for 38 years, right? Longer than some people in this have been alive, I'm sure. So one of the things that people have a lot of trouble with is drawing these super stiff characters. And the key to drawing action is this. Those are all lines, right? Let's put a torso right here and a head right here. And then we can put our waist here. And the distance between here and your waist and here in your chest literally defines the curve of the body. So like this person, if he is throwing a punch, he is throwing the heck out of that punch. Notice right here where the elbow is, I've given the arm a little bit of a bend. And I know that in fighting, if you punch straight, you'll break your arm. So you give it a little bit of a punch. Now his head is leaned in past his shoulders. We've thrown his waist here. So this means he's really throwing his hip into it. Notice I'm just sketching this out. I'm not trying to be real clean about it. Now, the arm that's forward, if this is his right arm, means that his left leg would be forward to throw this punch. And let's say the guy he's punching is right here. So you'll do this, and in this leg, the right leg would be back. And the reason for this is your body has to counterbalance itself. So if your right arm is forward, your left leg will be forward because you're trying to keep your body standing upright. So I'm going to show that the left leg is in the background. Notice I'm adding more shadows to it. The left arm will probably be somewhere down here because you're going to chamber your punch. You know, because he's punching with this one, so this one's going to be wrapped up to give him a 1-2. This leg is going to be back more. And if he's throwing a punch properly, this foot would be up on the ball. And this foot would be planted pretty firm. So that helps you establish how your guy is moving. But again, you want action. So for comics, the bigger this bend is here, the greater the distance between the chest and the waist, the more action. So if you were going to do Spider-Man, you are more or less going to make as much of his abs disappear as possible to crunch him up. So you would do his chest here, midsection here. Abs are, notice how I've got his abs starting to turn here. Then here's the waist. Let's put one leg out, the other leg out, because he uses momentum to swing. And now this is going to turn this shoulder and arm. And this is a Spider-Man pose everyone's seen. His hand is here. That means this one will probably go back. There'll be a rope, there'll be a web line here and a web line here that he's swinging on. So he's letting go of this one, swinging with this one. And then we can keep this foot tucked in. And we would keep this one out a little bit more. And you're probably thinking, man, this guy is really, really sketchy for a professional artist. So if you ever find the time to do this, sit around in your sketchbook and literally do hundreds of these unfinished, crappy looking sketches. Because if you've noticed, I've made this arm smaller. This arm is more pronounced now. The shoulder's in the front, this leg is behind. But I didn't spend a lot of time figuring out, yes, I know as a professional artist that you are going to have a mastoid and a jugular for your neck. You're going to have a collarbone that looks like an upside down coat hanger. You're going to have two trapezius muscles here. You're going to branch. Your chest is going to come here and it is going to separate into three distinct muscles. Your deltoid is going to touch the base of your chest. It's going to be three muscles. While we're talking about a little bit about anatomy for a second, I'm going to take time to tell you something else. When you're drawing arms, your bicep is not this big. Your bicep is small. Your tricep is the biggest muscle group in your arm. Your arm should be three muscles: a tricep, a brachial muscle, and then a bicep that tapers down. See, I know all of these things as an artist, but if I focus on this while I'm trying to draw a story, it is going to be as stiff as this guy right here. So you want to do this to learn energy and momentum, and then you can start refining it down. I'm actually downstairs, I'm working on a commission of Wolverine. And it started out much like this, but then I slowly went back in and carved out what needs to be where it is. So, I know that this is Spidey. I'm going to figure out where his eyes are. And I always start with the eyes. And I try to set out where my torso and waist are. These are the key components to drawing action in comics. Your waist, your chest, and the relation to your head. So you notice I've got here, here, and here. Everything else is secondary. I'm literally showing a motion. And that's something that you also have to do in storytelling. There are techniques people use, like with the Flash. If the Flash is running towards you, we talked about this already. If this hand is forward, this leg is back. This leg is forward. This arm is back. And notice I'm just shadowing the upper part of the arm, the back part of this leg. So I have this guy running. Now, if I want to speed this up a little bit, I can do, here's our panel border. I can do this. And I'm literally making you go, ta-da, you're zooming into the guy, and it makes him standing still, but he looks like he's running. I can even chop his legs off and he still looks like he's moving towards you. I can literally go, look at my pencil. Ta-da, he's still moving. He's standing still, but he's still moving because your eye went, he's doing a thing. Same thing with capes. There's always this static pose of Batman. Looking over the city. And there's Batman's cape. But I can take that same cape and I can throw some wind to it. And now we've made a much more dynamic Batman looking over the city. And you're like, but it's, why is it always windy on top of buildings? Honestly, it is because of airflow. If you get on the top of a high building in a city, notice the higher you get, it gets a little bit colder because of the altitude thinning out, and the wind picks up because there's not as many things to break the wind. So that's why, if you've got a cape on top of a building, man, make that cape flap. The same things for, again, directing the eye with a character. If I have a guy falling towards you or flying down towards you, let's do flying down towards you. There's his head, there's his hands, there's his feet. You know what? He's got a cape. He's Superman. Okay. Now, so I want him flying down towards you. Remember the same trick I did with the plane, with the buildings? Do the same thing here, but now make the buildings go past him. So this way he is now coming down towards you. You're making him come to you. And then if you really want to get into your reader's face, make his hands bigger, because if you think about it, his hands are forward. So his hands are going to be closer to you. So it's just those are just quick ways to move through stories. The other thing, and I'll do this quick because I know we're running out of time. I was talking about, like, with the page from the front, lighting. If you want a character, he's walking down an alley. So here's a guy walking down an alley. Here's your trash dumpster. Some garbage bags, trash strewn everywhere. There's garbage over here. You know what? There's a homeless guy sitting right here. Let's just show that this guy's out in the middle of nowhere. This is all the things. But if I really want to make this creepy, let's take the light and make the shadow go from him to here. And now you have a guy in a dark alley. Suppose we have the same guy here, and he's just minding his own business, walking along. And you have your buildings here. But let's cut the panel off right here. You draw a head and some shoulders here and shadow that in. And then you have his shadow casting in front of him. We just told everybody he's being followed. I didn't even have to show the bad guy. He's just being followed. The last thing, because it is 10 till, and I want to give you guys time for questions. When you're doing storytelling and you're doing lighting, if you want to do a villain, the more you ruffle the brow a little bit, bring down your nose, here's your eyes, your mouth, jawline, chin. So this is just your standard little face template. But if I wanted this to be, say, Magneto, we'll throw in his helmet. And I wanted Magneto to look a little more sinister. I'm going to use his helmet. and I am going to shade in all of this right here. I'm going to use those shadows to shade in part of his eyes. You know, you still draw the eyeballs themselves in. Let's use the helmet to shade light under his nose, under his mouth, define his chin a little bit more. And then you can start defining his cheekbones a little bit because Magneto's an older character. You know, think about it, dude's old. And then I can cast my shadows on his helmet here. Just by putting the shadows to his face, and shading out his neck, and then I add in his cape. Just by that, I've made him look darker, a little more evil. And you're kind of like, well, you know, clearly Magneto's having a bad day, you know. And that's another thing that I think about when you're doing stories. Look at movies. You know, look at how they introduce like a villain. You never see Freddy Krueger in bright light or Jason in bright light. It's always in dim light. Michael Myers' mask is not terrifying in bright light. I mean, it's William Shatner's face. Draw it in dark, draw darkness and shadows around it and make it pull. You know, you pick your focal point. You know, one of the things that they do for Mike Myers is his eyes are hollow because that makes it feel soulless. You know, there's nothing looking, you're looking into the void and the void is looking right back. The mouth does not move because it's just a hole for a mouth and it looks solemn. And yeah, if you guys don't know this, the mask for Michael Myers from Halloween is actually a mask of William Shatner's face. They were running low on budget. Somebody found a William Shatner mask, spray painted it white, and they said it was scary. And that is straight up, look it up. It's a hilarious story, but it's how they made it through their budget constraints. So look at those elements for your storytelling. And then, you know, like I said, if you want to pull this in to make it a little bit creepier, get your shadows in, you know, around the mouth, under the nose. But the main thing that I want to pull is this big hollow eye. That is the one thing I want everybody to see. I would probably even do some lighting up in here. So I'm pulling your to this eye. And honestly, if I was drawing it in a comic panel, I might even just do that. And I would just do the other eye here. And honestly, do this some. That is the last thing I'll tell you. If you draw something out and you're like, man, that face is kind of cool, but I just want to focus on this area, fine. There's your area. Use that. Put that in your panel and then draw your page. That's why I say keep a scrap piece around the thumbnail on. You'll come up with some really good stuff that you won't even realize you did. All right, so I'm going to stop drawing. We have 4 minutes. I'm going to start walking back down to my table, but do you guys have any questions?
Well, I know that, yeah, you don't have a lot of time left, but we did have one quick question that you could probably answer pretty easily. Sure. And it's just, what are some advice you would give on specifically for like tools for modern artists to use? Because, you know, things are a little different now than they were. And so what would you say, like new artists, like what's the important tools to get?
So I do work both ways. I have pencil, pen, paper, but if you want to do things a little more modern, you can do a Cintiq, which is a tablet you can use with your computer. I carry my iPad everywhere. My iPad is like my favorite sketch tool. I put Procreate on it, but I also use Photoshop because I can do digital colors and work on pages while I'm traveling. So that comes in handy when I'm on a plane and I'm bored out of my mind. But yeah, Procreate, Photoshop, an iPad, Apple Pencil or a stylus of any kind. Intuos makes the Cintiq and the Wacom tablets. They have a bamboo tablet, which is a cheaper option, if you're on a budget. But yeah, those are some of the tools that I would say you could use to be a little more modern.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Oh,
This
thank
was
you,
amazing
guys.
to have you here.
Well,
with
I
us.
really enjoyed it. I have a website, highburn.com. You are more than welcome to join the site. I'm all ages friendly, so you don't have to worry about anything. But look, in the forum column for like contact, you can go in there and do a little message request. If you want to send me a sample of a thing you're working on, you've got questions, you can ask me. I love those types of interactions. Follow me on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook. Same thing. Send me a message. Go, hey, I drew a thing. What do you think? I love doing it. I don't mind it at all.
All right. Well, that's awesome. That's an amazing opportunity.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for having me. Again, I really appreciated it and I enjoyed it.
All right. Well, thank you. And I hope you have a safe trip home.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.